Welcome to Behind the Narrative with me, Katharine Spence.
And me, Ian King.
Today, we're delighted to be joined by Helen Brocklebank, Chief Executive of Walpole, the official body for British luxury. Since 2017, she's led the sector's growth, championed sustainability, and advocated for policy change to support high-end British brands. Helen, it's so lovely to have you here. I've obviously known you for many years and known the fantastic work you've done with Walpole and to promote British luxury. But what does it really mean, British luxury? Can you just tell us a little bit about the brands that you support and the work that you do?
I can. So, as you know, Walpole is essentially the CBI of British luxury. The members that we have, I think, are the best way of describing what the sector is, because British luxury is an incredibly broad sector. So the extraordinary automotive brands like Rolls-Royce Motor Cars and Bentley and Aston Martin and Range Rover, or big fashion brands like Alexander McQueen and Burberry, retailers, Harrods, Fortnum & Mason, hospitality, Claridge's, Gleneagles, iconic Scottish whiskey brands like the Macallan and Glenfiddich. So, and then lots and lots and lots of really, really interesting and much, much loved SMEs, as well as some very unique kind of industrial crafts centres like Stoke Potteries with brands like Wedgwood, or Northampton shoemaking Churches. Churches is a good example of that. So there's a kind
very
of
broad in a way, isn't it?
It's really broad, and it's all based. The UK making is a really, really big part of the sector's appeal, but it's also a sector that is unbelievably popular internationally. So it's worth about 81 billion to the UK economy.
That's a staggering amount, really,
which
if you
is
think about it.
Bigger than the pharmaceutical sector, little known fact.
Yes.
It's a really, a really astonishingly hefty sector in terms of its economic value. It's a high growth sector, so it grows around 11% every year, which is, I think, if we think about the state of our own economy and actually other European economies, it's bucking the trend. But it's also something that is very, very good at taking the soft power of the UK to every corner of the world. So of that 81 billion, about 2/3 of that value is destined for overseas markets. So that, and to the US, with whom in places where we really need very good relationships. So North America is a huge market, China's a big market, the Middle East is a big market, and actually Europe, and as we start to try and repair some of the relationship that we have with our nearest continental neighbours, that feels
Do you
also
feel it's
important.
been broken? You said repair the relationship there a little bit.
Well, in terms of British brands selling into Europe, our exports to Europe would have been 41% better if we hadn't had Brexit than they are now. So whilst they have still grown in monetary value, actually they haven't grown nearly as fast as other international markets, which absolutely is a Brexit effect. Luxury is essentially an Anglo-European thing, kind of business. It's worth, across Europe, it's got a value of 978 billion euros. So big. And of course in France, you've got very, very big companies like LVMH and Kering and Hermes. LVMH was our continent's very first $500 billion business. So our secret sauce in our continent is not big pharma or big tech or big finance. It is actually luxury
and creative as well. You talk a lot about the fact that within that we have the skills, we have the desire, we have the design capabilities that are unique to the UK and the Eurozone as well, but also unique to the UK. But it does feel, from what you're saying, and that's the perception maybe, that British luxury is a sort of poor relation of the big European brands. I mean, when people think luxury, they think of Dior and Hermes
Prada,
and Chanel
yeah.
and Prada and the big Italian brands. And I suppose, we've got Burberry, we've got some fabulous fashion brands here and Aston Martin, as things that you mentioned. But they do feel a little bit small. Is that a problem for you in perception and in promoting the sector?
I think it's this country's superpower, actually, because the luxury economy in the UK is not supported by those huge behemoths like LVMH. We don't have that structure. It's lots and lots and lots of individual, smaller companies. Some of which are in the ownership of an LVMH or a Kering. But actually, it's lots of family businesses, the length and breadth of the country. And it really Walpole needs to work really, really, really hard to bring all of those brands together. And luxury is an industry that really took off probably about 25 years ago. We've always managed to get a decent cave to live in and started painting things on walls and had enough to eat, that kind of, we wanted something, a better, slightly nicer kind of woolly mammoth outfit or something. So the idea of luxury is really hardwired, but the economy of luxury has grown enormously in 25 years. And as in a more mature economy, what you have is a customer internationally that starts to look for things that are a little bit different, that are niche, that are something that nobody else can have. I mean, that idea of something else nobody else can have. Is that the
quintessence of luxury? That something that is a little different that no one else can have. Is that what it's selling in a way?
Well, I think that's absolutely part of its appeal. I mean, its appeal is really multifaceted, isn't it? For me, luxury is I've worked really hard, and I deserve something nice. And I think that's also where British luxury sits, because it's such a broad sector, because it isn't defined so much by a Chanel or an Hermes or a Vuitton. We can all have a bit of luxury. It should be able to belong to anybody. It should be about your own aspiration as an individual. So you might be, and fortunately are many of them, somebody that has commissioned their own beautiful Rolls Royce, that may have a lovely yacht built off the south coast, and a host of houses all with beautiful interiors by David Collins Studios or something like that. Happy days. But actually, you should be somebody that you just like whiskey, and the stories behind it, and you fell in love with the kind of the romance of the Macallan, and you have a bottle of their 15-year-old at Christmas. Or you might be somebody that has the £2 million. So it should be accessible. Yeah. It should feel like value. It should be your reward to yourself. But behind that, it should be beautifully crafted. It should be storied. It should be made with love by somebody hugely skilled for somebody like you that will love it back. I mean, if you go to Fortnum & Mason, you can pick up something extraordinary that is so special and so different and so interesting for your kind of for your lunch money. I mean, don't go and spend 12 quid in Pret. Go and treat yourself to something special and delicious in Fortnum & Mason and have a lovely time.
That reward point, isn't it? It's that reward and the deserving of it. And do you feel that that's still a message that is a good message when we have cost of living crisis, where there is a Eurozone? You mentioned it's an Anglo-European sector. We have a Eurozone and the UK, which is slow growth. We have very high energy costs here. So I want to talk a little bit about how brands are finding it difficult to break through when there seem to be so many barriers. But just in terms of the customer, you feel that luxury should be accessible for everybody, and that it's appealing still, and it's not intimidating.
Yes, it shouldn't be intimidating. I think that you don't want a big rope outside your shop with a line, and then somebody with a clipboard going, like you're at some club when you're 18, like, no, you're not pretty enough to come in. I mean, that just feels really, that's not where British luxury is at. You might not be somebody that's going to own a Bentley, but you will admire the design. You'll kind of feel proud that is a beautiful, iconic piece of British design. I think the message that I really want to get across, I think, to every customer in the UK, which I think is a message that gets across much, much better abroad, is that British luxury really matters because it supports nearly 500,000 jobs nationwide. So that, we do still have a fantastic high quality manufacturing base, those artisanal factories in Northampton, the distilleries in Speyside. I mean, the Mulberry factory in Somerset is just so extraordinary. You go there and you talk to the people who have been may have been working there for several generations. Last time I went, I met a granny and the mum and the daughter. And then they were like, the kind of great granddaughter was going to come in and work too. I kind of just love that. It just feels like a family business, and that sense of supporting those kinds of skilled jobs. I think there are real people who behind these beautiful products. So,
what do you think? I mean, it's a really interesting point you make that luxury is largely an Anglo-European business. I mean, probably the only real American luxury brand I can think of off the top of my head is Tiffany.
Oh, Ralph Lauren, I suppose, is
Ralph Lauren, yeah. I mean, and there's nothing in Asia. I mean, will it always be that way? If you look at the way that China's economy has grown, they weren't satisfied with just being sort of cheap manufacturers. They've moved up the value chain. Surely at some point China is going to come up with luxury brands of its own.
I think that's really exciting. And I think one of the challenges if we look at the kind of great history of China, we wouldn't have Wedgwoods had China not kind of had this extraordinary technological breakthrough with the creation of porcelain. And you think about the Ming vases. Go to any National Trust house, and the iconic products of the big aristocratic families were Chinese. There was a very, very beautiful luxury history of kind of extraordinary craftsmanship and luxury items, which actually was kind of wiped out in the Cultural Revolution. So I'm really excited to see some kind of local Chinese brands coming up. I think if we look at India, that is there's a thousands of year tradition of exquisite craftsmanship in textiles, in jewelry, in a whole kind of range of things that are kind of local luxury items. So it does that level of beauty exists in other places. I think it's just that the appeal of it is centred. The mass production, if you like, the industrialisation of luxury has happened in Europe and the UK.
I mean, watches is an interesting category because obviously the Swiss just dominate that.
But then look at Bremont watches, who 25 years ago, Nick and Giles English crashed their plane in a field in France. And then I think had been stranded in some farmers, with some farmer in northern France. Went, you know what? We kind of need to change our lives. We're going to make a watch brand. We're going to take on the big Swiss watch giants and bring that back to the UK. And now, fast forward 25 years, they have their factory. Bremont has its factory in Henley, and you can now make for the very first time every single component of a beautiful luxury watch here in the UK. And that, I kind of love that. There's a very plucky kind of spirit that exists in British luxury founders, where you just go, I'm going to take on, I love this thing, I'm going to make it better. I can do it, and I can do it here, and I can do it in my own way. I mean, we had the Walpole British Luxury Awards just recently, and the British Luxury Brand of the Year was won by Gusbourne. I mean, it is the English sparkling wine is an industry that didn't exist 25 years ago. And the kind of chutzpah of taking on the iconic French champagne and just going, you know what, we've kind of geologically, we have the right soil. If we plant the right vines, if we bring in the know-how from France, from South Africa, from all the kind of big wine producing areas, if we just really put our back into this, we can make an extraordinary product. And that's an award that's voted for by all the peers by your peers in luxury. It's not voted for by me. It's a peer group vote. So the accolade of an industry to a category that didn't even exist, I think that's the magic.
It does. These are great stories, Helen. And I suppose that the question is also, is it appealing to the next generation? Because I think every business, and luxury is no exception, is thinking, okay, we've done this great thing. We've made these watches, or we've supported this vineyard and are producing some great wines. But how to appeal to the Gen Zs? Are they as interested in British luxury, in your view, as they should be?
I feel really optimistic about that in terms of the consumer, and I saw there's been a great piece of research by Heiss Nobiety and the Boston Consulting Group recently, which is 6,000 international luxury customers, and it's a really deep study. It's called Luxury Redefined, if anybody wants to look it up. And in the Gen Z is kind of, they're not just obsessed by luxury, but they're obsessed by the things that British luxury does really well. That element of beautiful making, whether it's a service or a product, the kind of the heritage and the history, but the timelessness, because in an unstable world, that sense that something is kind of endure and is stable. be something that's made well so it will last, made by real people. I think these things are, these vibes are coming out of a young generation that's really, who is really well educated about luxury. So, I mean, my learning of luxury came from magazines because that was the prevailing gatekeeper for storytelling when I was growing up. But you look on TikTok, and the level of expertise in luxury and in luxury's history is phenomenal, and you really see that playing in the vintage market on sites like Vinted. I mean, there's lots of places where you can go and get secondhand luxury, and you have young customers with a deep knowledge going to search for some very specific piece from Galliano's 1997 runway collection, and what brands need to do to respond to that is to make sure that they're not talking at that customer.
Right. Yeah.
They understand that they have put a lot of effort into creating a deep level of knowledge. They know that Alfred Dunhill took over his dad's saddlery business and decided to transform it because the car was the cool thing. And they, so
it's more about the story.
You have to have a dialogue and try and meet somebody as an equal expert. And I think because we like a bit of pomp and circumstance in this country, but we don't stand on ceremony, that we are a nation of rule makers and rule breakers. I think that's a mood that really meets that Gen Z customer. And Gen Alpha, who are they're really young right now, they're kind of below 14, but they also seem to be picking that up. So I feel really optimistic. Where I feel more worried and where we are doing lots of work as an organisation is in making sure that we have a generation of makers coming through, because luxury is... There's no point us being in love with Savile Row bespoke tailoring skills or Northampton shoemaking or, I don't know, a Mulberry handbag, or a beautiful teapot from Stoke-on-Trent, if there's nobody there to make it.
And so do you feel that the UK luxury brands are trying their best to produce it, to manufacture it, to nurture that craftsmanship here, but in the end they give up? And go to Turkey and China because...
So they absolutely don't give up, because there are two reasons why they don't give up. One, because it's the wrong thing to do, and there's that kind of doing the right thing is a very big part of the British luxury spirit, but also because it would make no sense commercially, because if you are some gorgeous person in Dallas and you want an enormous British-made tea set, then you don't want that to be made, I don't know, in Indonesia particularly.
So where it's made still matters.
Where it's made matters enormously. And I think that storytelling about where it's made, if you look on TikTok or on Instagram, or even actually there's a good series in the Times at the moment about British making. You see that story being told. It should be made here. Not everything is able. You can't make everything here. We've lost the skills really to make really beautiful ladies' shoes. So if you're Manolo Blahnik, you will have bought your factory. You have bought your factory in Italy, so that you're supporting that supply chain. But on the whole, British making's got enormous appeal, and it's about that authenticity.
Does it matter that some of these brands aren't even British owned? I mean, Rolls-Royce and Bentley, they're both owned by German companies, for example.
Brilliant, though, because Bentley was employing, I think, about 1,000 people before Volkswagen ID Group bought that business, and now it is a huge, huge flourishing business. So it's been transformative. I think if you look at the Rolls-Royce Motor Cars did a brilliant economic impact study last year about what the 10 years that they've been manufacturing Rolls-Royce cars in Goodwood, what they've brought to the local economy. So I think this also should be it's a very investable sector. So when a company like Prada falls in love with Church's shoes and buys that company so it can preserve it as a huge part of it.
Did you?
Yeah,
Did you?
1999, I think it was.
Yeah. It's a real love affair. So, and that's supporting British skills. So I think that level of foreign, it is a foreign direct investment opportunity. But none of those companies have thought, oh yeah, let's just take this back to Italy and let's do Church of Shoes in Italy, because they know that it doesn't work. That's where the appeal is there. And there are great shoemakers in Italy, but no, keep it in, Prada keeps it in Northampton.
Talking of, you said your first touch of luxury was through the publishing world, Helen. You've had an amazing career before Walpole in Hearst Publishing and had a sort of magazine focus to your career before. So what made you make the switch to Walpole, and what did you learn from being in publishing that you've brought through to your role now?
So I was really lucky to have spent nearly 10 years working between Harper's Bazaar and Esquire. So I knew all about the business of luxury through Harper's Bazaar. I had lots of, had great relationships with, particularly with the big kind of French houses, the Italian houses, the Swiss watch giants. And actually with Esquire, I had a really strong understanding of British luxury, because British luxury products kind of skew quite male. I mean, the shoes are a good one. Or, Savile Row bespoke tailoring, and the whiskies and the beautiful cars. So I'd been to see the distilleries, I'd been to see the cars being made, and I just thought this was the most magical thing on the planet. And I really think I always felt then that maybe British luxury wasn't getting the attention that it deserved, that it was standing on its own 2 feet in terms of the making and the story and the beauty and how the customer felt about it. And yet we perhaps weren't anywhere near as proud of it in this country as we should have been, But maybe it's, you think about the appeal of an afternoon tea, and somebody from France, that's their best thing, and we're just going, no, all I want is a croissant, a black coffee, and a paper cafe. So I was really lucky to have fallen in love with luxury and have had that understanding, and then I ran my own small business, but kind of between times, and I got a call in 2016, completely out of the blue. I'm not going to lie. I mean, this was a really fantastically happy accident, to say that Walpole was looking for a new CEO. And I had always felt very passionately that British luxury wasn't getting the kudos that it deserved compared to other European economies. And we just had the Brexit vote. I don't want to kind of dig up all those kind of old wounds of kind of, the Leavers versus Remainers. But I thought, actually, this is, for the first time, this is a sector that is going to have some real problems, because I knew that its supply chains were so unbelievably well integrated into throughout Europe. How were the whiskey manufacturers going to be able to work with the Spanish bodegas in Jerez, upon which, hundreds and hundreds of years old relationships, that's the business depends on that. Is that going to be more difficult? And I thought, this is a sector that hasn't been affected by politics until this point, but this is going to get real.
And also, it was pretty small when you took it over, Helen. You've grown it to more than 200 members now?
Yeah, it's more than 250 members. So it's about 3 times the size that it was. But I think all I've done is to be able to unlock its potential. So I felt there's a bit of a crisis moment for this sector in that things are going to be, somebody needs to go and champion their interests in government. I mean, why I thought I could do that. I'd never had any relationship with government at all. But I felt I could tell that story, and that just to kind of bat there, kind of be the person cheerleading from the corner, as well as being able to convene these people, and had this idea that it should be there should be a kind of luxury CBI. These are the most important, most high profile, most beautiful industries that we've got in this country. We are quite complacent about them in a way that people in the US and the Middle East and kind of other parts of the world are not.
So membership, is there anyone that's not a member that you'd love to see become a member?
They are very welcome to come on board.
But also, have there been people that have said, we'd like to be a member of Walpole, and you said you're not quite luxurious enough, and you turned them away? I think you have to be. I mean,
it is a luxury is a bit of a wall garden. It is. It is a very broad. It is a much broader sector than the French economy. The French luxury economy. I mean, it is different. So I think it needs to embrace its difference and embrace everybody that might be quite a new aspirational luxury brand, and something that is right at the other end, like Rolls-Royce motor cars, which is kind of the apogee of luxury, isn't it? But everybody, if you've got the same customer and the same business model, that is such an incredible advantage. And I think if we think about this idea of luxury, the luxury CBI, then we have a much bigger advantage because all of our members do have the same customer and the same business model.
So the customer is the key, you think?
I think absolutely it is. So you've got a broad range of customer, but they are somebody who is aspirational, who is sufficiently affluent, whether they're a one bottle of whiskey a year to a Rolls-Royce, a commission, somebody commissioning a Rolls-Royce. But I think you also need a spirit and a culture within that membership because you have this absence of those big supergroups. Walpole needs to bring people together. So as an organisation, our mission is to protect, promote, and develop this, a sector worth £81 billion in the UK economy. But it's that. And so we are in Westminster most weeks. We're in Brussels 3, 4, 5 times a year because we're still affected by European legislation no matter. But actually the most important thing we do is we bring those 250 brands together because it's a very entrepreneurial sector. It's full of extraordinary entrepreneurial leaders, whether they have taken over a very big heritage brand like Josh Schulman in Burberry, that's kind of a PLC back in the FTSE 100, or whether they're a new challenger brand like Gusborne, less than 20 odd years old. You bring them together, you ask the right questions, you create the right conversations, and you get out the way. Because my belief is that these businesses will sort their own problems out if you give them that expertise of each other. There's no problem they can't solve, no opportunity they can't maximize if they just work together. I mean, and then there are a few, and we take those to government. But that's how do we unlock the potential of these incredible businesses? And I think the fact that it's grown 69% in the last 5 years suggests that, that model's working.
Yes, I mean, you raised Burberry there. I mean, obviously, I've written about this quite a lot. It's a business that's over the last decade, it's had some real troubles. It's had a succession of CEOs, all of whom looked like they were turning the business around, and then it turned out to be a false dawn. Do you think Josh Schulman this is a genuine recovery now? I
think we're seeing such incredible signs of, and the look at them in the share price, as we're recording this, has been doing really well. So the markets are really confident in what Josh is doing. It does, the fashion seasons work much more slowly than the kind of the cycles of the financial markets. So it will take time, but the confidence is there, and that's the most important thing. And then you look at the incredible storytelling that they've done. I mean, I don't know, let Instagram fall open, and you'll see beautiful, beautiful storytelling about the Britishness of the brand, but in a way that really connects into all of our view about what modern Britishness should be. But they're also telling the story of making in a compelling way. I mean, there's a kind of beautiful, kind of accessible, iconic product of theirs, which is their kind of cashmere scarf. Fantastic new scarf bars, really driving lots of people into those, into each of the retail, the beautiful boutiques. But those scarves are made by Johnsons of Elgin, where employs 1,000 people in the Highlands of Scotland, and have been making cashmere there for hundreds of years, and they've had a relationship with Burberry for more than 100 years. And so showing that it's not just a beautifully designed thing, it's actually made in Scotland. Again, this idea of made with love and care to the highest possible standards by people who really love it. I think that has also helped people really understand what the value is in that brand.
Yeah, and also I suppose Burberry is in the position of as you say, being in the FTSE 100 and therefore all eyes on it. I mean, it is the only British
It's
luxury
incredibly
brand
high
there.
profile.
Yeah, standard bearer. So I think, they are probably scrutinised in a way that is, quite stressful for them. But I suppose we don't have an LVMH, we don't have a Kering in this country. I mean, could we, I suppose? I mean, the only thing that we do have that is sort of similar to Diageo. And I just want to finish, I suppose, we've got to ask you a question about the secret that no one else knows in a second. But just before we get onto that, just finally, your hopes for British luxury. I mean, you sound so positive, your passion for it so comes through, but you also must be seeing lots of the challenges and lots of the difficulties. But it seems to me that you feel that British luxury has a great future, and kind of what next?
It's a very, very resilient business sector. And it's got two great things that are really important to the economy right now and always are important to the economy. No matter what the challenge is, it continues to grow, and it's really determined to continue growing and to innovate, to make that happen, and to be creative and bring people joy every single day. And it is a really big employer. I mean, nearly 500,000 jobs nationwide, good, well-paid, sustainable jobs. So I think my vision for Walpole is that we really do everything that we possibly can to protect those jobs and to make sure that we can continue to protect those iconic businesses and that we facilitate that growth. But the challenges are huge. Trump tariffs are a really big issue. It's 22% of all exports of British luxury into the US. That's not nothing. It's terrifyingly big. But you keep on keeping on. The trade barriers have never been higher for a business that is so focused on export. But this is a resilient business. They're very entrepreneurial leaders. They have good leadership. Great people at the helm. And really, really good people making it, and a resilient customer.
Sounds amazing. It's a good note to finish on, Helen. And just finally, though, we always ask on Behind the Narrative, what is something about you? What is a secret about you that no one else knows that you can share?
You're asking me to open my wardrobe and show that it isn't all Savile Row trained, bespoke materials. I'm a massive gym goer. That sounds really obvious. But I discovered strength training. I like strength training before actually the year I came to Walpole, and it is the single most important thing that I do. I like to get up in the morning and lift some really, really heavy weights. But I think that's this idea of being we've talked a lot about resilience. We talk a lot about resilience in luxury generally and talk about it as a robust and resilient industry. But actually, if you think of any business leader in any business sector, the last 7 years have required things of leaders that they never thought they would need to face, obviously, Brexit was really difficult because it was just such a massive change that nobody ever, trained for. The pandemic, the cost of living crisis, just and. And I think your strength doesn't come from nowhere. So for me, it's become a massive metaphor for what does strength actually mean? And the reason I love doing a 100-kilogram deadlift or something.
100K, seriously?
I'm really strong, Katharine. I'm really, really strong.
That's really good.
But I wasn't. And I love this as a kind of, it really shapes my thinking because you don't start off strong. It's just about doing the same thing and pushing yourself a tiny weeny bit harder every on a regular basis. And that if you continue to push yourself a bit harder, your strength and your resilience and your stamina will just grow. So I think, I think
I love that. I love that. That's very nice.
That's my kind of weird, guilty secret. And I'll occasionally post things on Instagram because I have a really, really hard week, and one of my pals in the gym has taken some pictures of me looking awful, completely unmade up with mad hair.
I don't believe it.
But kind of lifting something, because I think you've got to find your grit. I mean, I've got an incredible job. I am the most privileged person in the world, to be the champion of such extraordinary businesses. I mean, it really is. I mean, I kind of pinch myself every day that I have been trusted with this job. But, I just want to be strong enough to make sure that I do the job that they deserve.
Keep going. Keep calm and carry on.
Keep calm and carry on.
Thank you very much.
Keep lifting the weights.
Keep lifting the weights. Thanks very much, Helen.
Thank you.